Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with Game 8 of the 2018 World Championship match between the champion Magnus Carlsen and the challenger Fabiano Caruana. Here we see the handshake when Carlsen arrived at the board and another handshake when the game started. Let's look at what happened. Game 8 was played on Monday the 19th of November 2018, white Caruana, black Carlsen. And like Caruana did in his first 3 games with white, he also opened this one with e4. And Carlsen replied with c5, the Sicilian, knight f3, knight c6, and in the first 3 games when Caruana was white we saw bishop b5, the Rossolimo, but now finally Caruana felt he was ready for the open Sicilian. His teammate had 10 days to figure out what to do against 2 knight c6 on the second move, and they finally were ready to play the open Sicilian. C takes, knight f6, knight c3, and Carlsen plays the Sveshnikov opening. Everybody was happy because this is one of the sharpest systems in chess. Knight db5, d6, and here bishop g5 is the main move, which has tons of theory and crazy complications. Caruana uses a calmer option with knight d5. Also played many times. Carlsen took. Caruana took with the pawn and the knight went back to b8. All black's pieces are on the bottom rank, but he is going to develop the knight to d7 and also the other pieces will come into play. Here c4 is the main move. Caruana played a4. That is a more positional approach with the idea of using the b6 square after black kicks the knight back. Then the knight will go to a3, to c4 and then to b6. And with the pawn on c4, that maneuver is not possible. This was explained by Grandmaster Peter Leko, the World Championship challenger in 2004, in one of the broadcasts that I followed. After a4, Carlsen played bishop e7, developing, bishop e2, both players castled, and now knight d7. Other options here are f5 or a6. But knight d7 was played by Carlsen. Bishop d2, an important move as explained by Leko. This bishop is covering the a5 square and we'll see in a minute why that is important. f5 from Carlsen, it's clear white plays on the queen side with his pawn majority there and black plays on the king side because he has 4 pawns there and white only has 3. And here comes a5, a new idea denying black the chance to block the expansion on the queen side, which Boris Gelfand, the World Championship challenger from 2012, did in a recent game where he was able to play a5 and b6 to stop white's expansion on the queen side. The white move a4, a5 prevents that. a6 from Carlsen, kicking the knight and voluntarily giving up the b6 square, and knight a3. And this is now possible because the bishop is protecting the a5 pawn, which is attacked by the queen. That's why the knight can go to a3 and then to c4 and to that nice square on b6. e4 from Carlsen, he has to go forward on the king side. Knight c4 as planned, knight e5. Really giving white the b6 square now. The knight was protecting the b6 square, but now Caruana puts his knight there. Attacking the rook, rook stepped aside, and f4, a very important move to stop the advance of black's kingside pawns. Carlsen took en passant, bishop takes, and black's problem piece is this bishop. He really needs to find a better home for that bishop than on its initial square. And here Carlsen played g5. As Leko explained, black has to go for it on the king side to counterattack white's play on the queen side. If he does not act quickly, he may be too late. And Grandmaster Nigel Short called this a bold move and probably a necessary move. He also said that white is winning on the queen side, but he could get mated on the king side. We have a very exciting game. There was a tweet from Grandmaster Anish Giri, who said that g5 is not an accurate move and that f4 should have been played. And he said probably Team Carlsen's file says something like f4 and then rook a4, because the move c4 is now apparently not as strong. So rook a4 and only then g5. That's probably what Carlsen should have played, because now, after the move g5, Without f4 first, black gets into difficulty. Yes, this is all very complicated and move orders are very important. After g5, white can play c4 and f4 now from Carlsen and bishop c3. So far Caruana only needed time to write down the moves. He had more time on the clock than he started with because of the 30-second increment after each move. The move bishop c3 was the first move that he spent some time on. WhiteElo explained here that if white gets too tempy with b4 and c5, then black's position will collapse. And on chess.com, Hikaru Nakamura said that the next 5 moves will be decisive for the outcome of this game. Everybody was really excited. After 7 draws would we finally have a decided game. Bishop f5 played after 20 minutes of thought. Carlsen was now almost an hour behind on the clock. Yasasaran said white has everything he wants. He's not forced to prepare c5 with b4. He can go for it straight away. And Caruana did indeed do that. He said he did not really consider any other move than this pawn sacrifice, because that's what it is. On the St. Louis broadcast, Yasasaran asked Maurice Ashley, do you really have to play c5 here? Ashley answered, if you want to kill him, you do. As said, it's a pawn sacrifice. Carlsen took on f3 with check, queen takes, and now took on c5, and there's an extra pawn. But this pawn on d6 is a monster. White has more than full compensation for the pawn. His pieces are much nicer positioned than black's pieces. Here rook a e1 is the best move in the position. Rooks belong on open files. One of black's ideas is to bring his queen through e8 to the knight square on g6, and rook a e1 stops that idea. If black now plays queen e8, then there is d6, and this bishop is pinned. White wins. So rook a e1 is the best move here. Caruana played rook a d1. Also looks very logical behind the passed pawn. Carlsen played bishop d6, blocking the runaway criminal on d5. As mentioned, white's pieces are better positioned, especially black's rooks are quite poor. And here is a very important moment in the game. In all the broadcasts that have followed, queen h5 was suggested as the best move. Let me give you one variation that was shown. If black plays bishop g6 to kick that queen, queen goes forward with a checkmate threat on g7. So black has to play rook f7 to protect the g7 square, then rook fe1, bishop f8 to kick the queen away from black's king's position, queen h3, bishop f5, queen h5, bishop g6 and queen f3. This variation was shown by Yasasaran and it looks very good for white. He has pushed back black's pieces, has his rooks on the central files, black has a terrible rook on b8, and white has this very dangerous passed pawn. The engine also very much likes this for white. Black is very much on the defensive, white has winning chances here. But Caruana did not go for queen h5. After bishop d6 he played h3. Yasasaran said a very, very hesitant move. Grandmaster Ashley said a huge, huge mistake. And Peter Svidler said this is saying to black, your only counterplay is g4 and followed by queen h4, and I'm stopping that counterplay and I can afford to play this position slowly. But it turned out that white cannot play this position slowly. He really should have gone for queen h5. After the move played in the game h3, Carlsen played queen e8. On the way to g6, Caruana after the game said that he had underestimated this maneuver. Knight c4, there goes the queen to that nice square. Caruana took on d6, queen takes, and h4. White is still better in this position. Grandmaster Svidler said that the best thing about black having an extra pawn is that he may be able to give it back in order to swap some pieces. White still has a small edge. Carlsen took on h4, and Svidler explained that this is not a move you necessarily want to make, but as everything else is worse, you get to it by process of elimination. And that's how grandmasters sometimes get to their moves. Interesting to hear Svidler explain that. Now black is 2 pawns up. Caruana won a pawn back by taking on f4. The queens were swapped, and here h5. An awesome move, said Alexander Grishuk. The bishop keeps protecting the d7 square in many variations that the grandmasters showed. The bishop went back to g6, but with h5 the bishop can go to g4 and keep an eye on that important d7 square. If you take on h4, then there is bishop g4, and it will take a long time for this rook to come back into the game. After h5 you can also try d6 with the idea of rook d5 to g5, harassing black's king. But then there is bishop g4, attacking both rooks. This rook is now attacked, and this rook is attacked. So rook takes f8 check, king takes, rook d5, rook c8, d7, and rook d8 was one of the variations shown, and black is okay here. This position is about even. Caruana went for a third option after h5. He played rook e1. Bishop g4 from Carlsen, rook f6, those rooks were swapped, and king f7. White is still a bit better. Carlsen has to avoid the rook coming to e7, and he succeeds in doing that. Bishop takes h4 from Caruana, rook e8, rook f1 check, king back, rook f6, rook e2, rook g6 check, king f8, and there goes that pawn. Finally d5 d6. And black still has to be careful. You cannot take that pawn on b2 because then white wins with the very nice move rook takes g4, removing the defender of the d7 square. H takes, d7, rook behind the pawn, but white promotes to queen with check, rook takes, bishop takes, and this is a winning position for white. Carlsen was not going to fall for that. After d6 he played rook d2 straight away behind the pawn, and after rook g5 Caruana offered a draw. Carlsen thought for a while but then accepted the draw. Black can take on d6, then white will take on c5, and this position is indeed equal. And we had seen an exciting fight in game 8, but the result was the same as in the first 7 games. This game also ended in a draw. Here we see the handshake after the game. Draw was agreed. And here we see the table. 8 draws, which is equaling the record of the Kasparov-Anand match of 1995, which also started with 8 draws. And then the fireworks started. Anand won game 9, Kasparov won game 10, and it was a slugfest from then on. Carlsen said in the press conference, "I feel relieved. He had all the chances. I'm happy I survived it. I thought my position was dangerous and I was behind on the clock, but there was no way to deviate. I had to go for a sharp line and hope for the best. My team are working their asses off. I'm very happy with them." "Are you hoping for a tiebreak?" he was asked. He said, "When it gets to that, I will take it and make the best of it, but I'm sure there will be twists and turns before we get there." Caruana said, "I feel minor disappointment as I had a good position. When I played c4, c5, I did not consider any other moves. Maybe I should have played queen h5. That's probably a better option, but I could not make it work." This is an interesting chart which I copied from the St. Louis live coverage. It shows the number of decisive games in the 12-game format of the World Championship, which is in operation since 2006. As you can see, in 2006 there were 6 decisive games, although one was a forfeit because of Toilet Gate. In 2008 there were 4 decisive games. In 2010 5 decisive games. 2012 only 2. 2013 Carlsen won 3 games against Anand and 4 decisive games in the Carlsen-Anand rematch. And 2 years ago there were 2 decisive games. Karjakin won game 8 and Carlsen won game 10. And there at the top you can see that about 1/3 of games in the last 7 World Championship matches had been decisive. Let's see what the last 4 classical games will bring. It will be very exciting. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel and please leave a comment. I will read them all and I will reply to them all. If you liked the video, it would be great if you could share it on social media by clicking the share button on YouTube. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.